Mother-in-law, please don't take money from my wallet. My mother-in-law, who couldn't resist stealing, was trying to take money from my wallet again. When I told her to stop, she got angry. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. Then she kicked me out of the house. She didn't realize she was making a big mistake. My name is Alina, and I'm 27 years old. I met Mike through a friend's introduction, and today we happily got married. When I was young, I lost my dad, and my mom raised me by herself. I respect and love her very much. However, when I first met my future mother-in-law, she said, "You look unlucky. That's why you lost your husband early." My mom and I were shocked by her rude comment about my late father. Both my father-in-law and Mike scolded her, but she defended herself, saying she was just being honest. My mom was worried about my marriage, but since my father-in-law and Mike were supportive, she eventually agreed to it. During the wedding, I was worried about what my mother-in-law might do. Thankfully, everything went smoothly. Just when I was starting to relax, there was a knock on the door of the dressing room. "Alina, it's your mom and Robert. Can we come in?" "Yes, please come in." It was my mom and her boyfriend Robert. They both shared their heartfelt congratulations and sat down. "That was a wonderful ceremony. Congratulations, Alina. You looked absolutely stunning." Robert was so moved that he cried the whole time. Well, seeing Robert's tear-streaked face, both my mom and I burst into laughter. In that cheerful atmosphere, Mike knocked and entered. "Alina, great job today. Mom, Robert, thank you for being here." "Good job, Mike. Where are your parents?" "My mom got tired and wanted to leave early, so I let her go." "I'm sorry." "It's fine. More importantly, keep your promise to me, okay?" "Of course." The agreement between my mom and Mike was that if my mother-in-law did anything to me while we were living together, Mike would always support and defend me. Because of my mother-in-law's insistence, I had to live with her after getting married. Initially, the plan was for Mike and me to live together, just the two of us. But my mother-in-law threw a fit, saying we couldn't get married unless we lived with her. Seeing my distress, my mom made this promise with Mike. Even my father-in-law said, "If something's up, let me know." Mike also told me that if living with his mom became truly unbearable, we could consider living separately. "Alina, if my mother does something, tell me right away, okay? Even if it seems small." "All right, I understand. Thanks. And I'm still working, so I'm not home that much. I think it'll be okay." "You're being naive, Alina. Well, this is something you'll only understand once you experience it. Take care of my daughter, Mike." "Yes, ma'am." I soon learned that my mom was right. After returning from our honeymoon and living in Mike's family home, I immediately saw my mother-in-law's true colors. "This food looks terrible. Redo it." Without even tasting the meal I had just prepared, my mother-in-law dumped it straight into the trash. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Mike immediately scolded her, but she retorted, "I can't let you two eat such terrible-looking food." "I threw it out for your sake and yet? Never mind." Then she stormed off to her room. Apologizing, Mike and his dad decided to take us out for dinner. When my mother-in-law heard this, she threw a tantrum about not being invited, but Mike and his father just ignored her. This made her even angrier, and she started harassing me more. Mike's family runs a small workshop, and Mike is busy preparing to take over. He studies hard, attends meetings with his father, and networks a lot. I have my job during the weekdays and am hardly home, but the weekends were a nightmare. My mother-in-law mostly stays home, does no housework, and either lounges around watching TV or goes out. Mike tries to help out when he can, and after the food incident, my father-in-law told me I can manage on my own. Just prepare food for Mike. When my mother-in-law found out about this, she said, "As a daughter-in-law, it's only natural that you should prepare food for the whole family." But my father-in-law dismissed her. Adding to the mix, my mother-in-law has very old-fashioned views. "Alina, when are you going to quit your job? When are you having kids? A woman can achieve anything with ability and charm, you know. Don't you understand? Oh, maybe you lack those, so you're still working." From her comments, it's clear my mother-in-law doesn't work and is a housewife. But according to Mike, she struggles with household chores. She's technically listed as an employee at my father-in-law's company, but she doesn't actively work. Instead, she receives a salary as pocket money from my father-in-law. However, whenever she likes something, she buys it right away, so my father-in-law handles the finances. Mike never lends her money, so when she's short on cash, she asks me, "Alina, can you lend me some money?" "I'm sorry, but Mike told me not to lend you any money." After enduring her mistreatment, I couldn't understand why she expected me to lend her money willingly. Even after I refused, she persisted. "I'll make sure Mike and your dad don't find out, okay?" "I can't, sorry." "Please, Alina." "I'm sorry." My mother-in-law tried to smile and pleaded with me, but when I continued to refuse, she erupted in her usual temper tantrum. "Why are you being so difficult? You're really stingy for not helping me, even though I'm asking nicely. I can't believe it." That's why I treat you badly. Does she even realize she's the one being mean? It's surprising that someone as kind-hearted as Mike could have a mother with such a personality. Just when I was mentally trying to escape from her drama, she stormed off somewhere, clearly irritated. When Mike came home and I told him about his mother pestering me for money, both he and my father-in-law scolded her. Instead of feeling sorry, my MIL glared at me and accused, "You tattled." She then sneakily tried to rummage through my purse and take cash from my wallet. While I was out of the room, we made eye contact as I walked back in. "MIL, don't you dare take money from my wallet. I can't believe this." I warned her, but she snapped back at me. "Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. It's like stealing from someone else's wallet. How dare you speak up to me? Unbelievable. If you're going to be like this, just leave this house." I had reached my limit with my selfish NIL. Honestly, getting away from her unreasonable behavior would be a relief. I told her, fine, and started packing my things. She watched me with a smug grin, seemingly satisfied. "Thanks for everything." It had only been 3 months since I moved in with my in-laws, but I vowed never to live with my NIL again and went back home in anger. I was so upset that I forgot to tell Mike. However, when he returned home, he found out from his father about what had happened with his mother. "Where's Alina? Hey, where did Alina go?" When Mike and his father returned home from work and noticed I was gone, they asked my MIL about it. She proudly said, "Oh, I just kicked that useless daughter-in-law out." She laughed loudly, but both Mike and his father looked worried and uneasy. Seeing their serious reaction, she continued obliviously. "This is what I've been saying. I warn you not to marry a woman from a single-parent family. She's always disobedient and challenges me." All she had to do was agree with whatever I said. "What have you done?" My father-in-law shouted, more agitated than I had ever seen him. My NIL looked shocked, clearly not expecting such a reaction. Father-in-law collapsed to his knees, looking devastated, muttering, "It's over, my life is over." "What's wrong?" My MIL seemed bewildered, struggling to grasp what was happening. "You've done something unthinkable. Why did you kick her out?" Father-in-law's voice trembled with emotion. "Alina is the stepdaughter of the CEO of the company we do business with." "What?" It finally dawned on my MIL what she had done. Her face went pale for a moment, but she quickly composed herself, insisting she hadn't done anything wrong. "Mike, call Alina right now." I did. She's at Robert's place now. "This is serious. Let's go immediately." I got a call on my cell from Mike, telling me that his father-in-law was possibly putting his mother-in-law into the car and heading our way. From the background noise, I could hear my MIL shouting frantically and my father-in-law yelling, "Robert, you came to the wedding with my mother as her new husband." Even though he's technically my stepfather, it turns out Robert is actually the boss of my father-in-law's business client. My mother had always said she wouldn't remarry until after I got married, so she hadn't met our families until the wedding and wasn't seated in the family section at the ceremony. So my mother-in-law doesn't know about this. My father-in-law only recently found out that Robert was my mother's new husband. Robert married my mother after I got married, but I've known Robert for nearly 20 years. After my father passed away, my mother raised me on her own. No matter how tough things got, she never complained and was always smiling, brightening up everyone around her. Robert, smitten by her, proposed to her, but she apparently told him she wouldn't marry anyone until after I was married. I don't want to burden Alina anymore, getting a new dad, changing her last name, moving. I can't make her go through all of that just because of adult circumstances. I'm so sorry. I'll wait. Huh? I'll wait until Alina grows up, becomes independent, and someday gets married and is happy. Then it'll be my turn to make you happy. Robert, can I stay and watch over Alina with you until then? By then, won't we be pretty old? It doesn't matter. If we're talking age, I'll be even older. Robert laughed heartily, my mother with tears in her eyes, thanking him. Robert respected my mother's wishes, always promising to wait. They never officially married until I did, but I knew they deeply loved each other, even after losing my father. Sometimes I felt like if my mother married Robert, she would be taken away from me. There were times I wasn't kind to Robert, but he always treated me lovingly, often taking us out or going on trips. He even tried to pay for my college tuition. My mother declined, saying it was a matter of principle, but that's the kind of relationship we had with Robert. Of course, my childhood home now belonged to Robert, so as my MIL suggested, we returned there. When we filled Robert in on everything that happened with my in-laws and about my MIL, he was furious. Knowing the business relationship with my father-in-law's company, he was boiling with anger when the doorbell rang. My mother checked the monitor and saw my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Mike outside. She asked Robert if they could come in, and he agreed, unlocking the door to welcome them. As soon as they entered and saw the tense atmosphere, both my father-in-law and Mike knelt down. "We're deeply sorry. My wife was very rude to Alina. It seems she forced Alina to leave. My father-in-law apologized. I'm sorry too. If Alina is uncomfortable, we can stop living together, Mike added. While they were apologizing, my MIL stood defiantly with her arms crossed. What are you talking about? Alina is the one at fault here, right? I did nothing wrong. Besides, who will do the housework now that Alina is gone? I was stunned, unable to close my open mouth. Looking at my indifferent MIL, I knew she lacked common sense, but I never expected her behavior to escalate like this. It was my father-in-law who finally broke the silence. I knew you were sheltered and naive, but I never imagined you'd go this far, he said with resignation. We'll start the divorce proceedings as soon as tomorrow. I'm utterly disappointed in you. What are you talking about? Why should I be the one to get a divorce? If anyone should, it should be Alina and Mike since she left on her own. My MIL's earlier arrogance vanished when faced with the prospect of divorce from her husband. Mike joined in the confrontation. Why should I divorce Alina? I love her. I have no intention of divorcing her. We only agreed to live with you because you begged us, crying, and yet you treat Alina like a maid. Stop talking nonsense. My father-in-law nodded in agreement and said, a mix of exasperation and anger evident in his voice, your father asked me to take care of you, so I became your husband and took care of you. But no matter how many times I warn you, you never listen and you never show any remorse. At this age, you're beyond my control. My mother-in-law clung to my father-in-law, who appeared distant, perhaps reflecting on the challenges he had faced until now. What about the company? It belonged to my father. Your father passed the company to me when he passed away. Even if I retire, Mike is here. You've only been a figurehead at the company and haven't done any real work. Do you think you can suddenly take over? I won't let the employees end up on the streets because of you. My MIL appeared to be searching for a way out as she faced criticism from her husband and Mike. Just to clarify, my MIL is a true daddy's girl, raised in luxury. She's never held a job, always living as a pampered princess. Without her husband's support, she wouldn't be able to manage household chores, let alone a job. My MIL tried to hold on to my father-in-law, but his decision seemed firm. Alina, say something. Out of desperation, she turned to me for support. I also believe divorce is the right decision. Someone who tries to steal money from another's wallet and then reacts aggressively when confronted, who knows what she might do next? What are you talking about? To those who might not know the real reason I left, I explained that it was because my MIL had attempted to steal money. Their faces turned pale. I can't believe this. This is unbelievable. Stop exaggerating. I was just borrowing a little, MIL retorted unapologetically. Both my mother and Robert countered firmly. In most places that's called theft, which is a serious crime. I thought you were unreasonable, but I cannot allow my daughter to return to a place where someone like you lives. I agree. Alina may not be my biological daughter, but she is precious to me. How can I send back such a beloved daughter to someone who mistreats her? Robert added. I have no response to that. We are truly sorry. Throughout this conversation, both my father-in-law and Mike have been apologizing repeatedly, but MIL hasn't apologized once. You're the reason for all this, aren't you? How can you behave like this? Despite their apologies, MIL showed no remorse. Well, that's because, look, I've encountered a few people like you in my time, so I can pretty much guess. If I were you, I'd consider a divorce. Don't make decisions for me. You're the one being unreasonable here. Enough is enough. I'm telling you I will go to court if necessary, but I'm divorcing you. That's final. No, please. My father-in-law had indeed prepared divorce papers with his part filled out. He was ready to take legal action if MIL resisted. Finally grasping the seriousness of the situation, MIL reluctantly signed the divorce papers and relinquished half of the assets. My father-in-law seemed strangely relieved. Mike kept his promise to my mom and severed ties with MIL. Even my father-in-law distanced himself from her. After the divorce, MIL couldn't curb her shopping habits and quickly spent through her share of the assets. Despite trying to reach out to them multiple times, both were steadfast in blocking her out completely. Recently, I happened to see someone who resembled MIL. She had aged considerably, losing her once proud and arrogant demeanor, looking frail and fragile. Her whole presence had changed. Due to her behavior, she had always been kept at a distance. Now, after everything that happened, negative rumors about her were spreading like wildfire. It seemed no one was willing to help her anymore. It's said that she's finally feeling remorse for her actions. As they say, actions have consequences. A few days later, my father-in-law and Mike visited Robert with a box of chocolates to apologize. When I explained that MIL had disappeared, Robert and my mother cautioned them not to let it happen again. Afterward, I returned to Mike's family home. Since MIL left, my stress levels have dropped significantly. Not just me, but both my father-in-law and Mike also seem to be much happier. Soon after, I found out I was pregnant, and the whole family was overjoyed. We are eagerly awaiting the arrival of our new family member.